Hello friends, you are watching C programming tutorial classes brought to you by Ankpro training. And the topics for this class are: first we'll discuss about the array, what is array, why it is used and its advantages. And the structure, declaration and initialization of array and some example programs to demonstrate it. So first let's discuss what is array. It is very useful to have one name for a group of variables of the same type that can be accessed by a numerical index, right? So far we have used many variables which can store maximum of one single value at a time, right? We have used many types of variables. All those variables were holding only a single piece of data at the same time. We weren't able to store multiple data in the same variable, right? So it is very useful if we can have a single name for a set of variables having the same type of data belonging to some particular item, right? So that is what array is. An array is a collection of elements or a group of elements. All the elements of array are homogeneous. That means we can combine a group of elements into the single variable, not exactly into the single variable, but we declare a single variable where it can span up to many memory locations. And all those elements are called as items of the array or directly as elements of the array, and all those elements are of same type. That means we can have elements in the array only of the type int or only of the type character, strings. Okay, you can't mix the types in the elements in the array. And all elements are stored in the contiguous memory locations. So it's very useful, and it is important to know that all those elements are stored in the continuous fashion in the successive memory locations. Array is helpful when we need to store multiple values of same type, right? For example, marks of 30 students. Let's suppose we have a class where 30 students are studying, and we need to store the marks of all those 30 students. So what we are going to do if we don't know the array? We're going to use 30 different variables, right? We're going to declare too many variables for that. So using array, we're not going to do that. Rather, we declare just a single array where it can store all those 30 elements. And to store a list of customer names, and to store the matrix elements. So these are some of the examples where you can implement the array. So how to declare the array? So it is same as declaring any normal variable with the size given to that particular variable. So here is an example of declaring an array. So int is a data type that is going to be the type of this array called marks. So here marks is a variable which can hold three different integer values, or all can be same also. But remember, the point is it can hold three integers in it. So that is what we specified inside this square brackets. So this is the size of this array. That means in the memory locations, 3 memory blocks are allocated to this variable, right? If it is of type int, then 2 bytes for each of the variable marks is allocated. So marks of 3 is going to have 6 memory locations continuously. So this is how we initialize the array. So this is one of the types of initializing the array, marks 3. So this is going to hold 3 integers. That is what we specified here in the curly braces using the assignment operator. So this is both declaration and initialization. We can imagine variable marks of 0, marks of 1, marks of 2. So those are the 3 different locations where these values are going to be. Say, let's suppose we want to store a name in a variable. So as far as we know, that character variable can hold a single character at the time, right? So if we make that as array, we can store up to any number we want. Right, char name of 7, this means this character variable can store 7 characters. Right, not exactly 7 characters, but you can have one number less than the 7, because at the end it is going to attach its own delimiter, which is called as null character, which shows the end of string. So when you declare array for storing 7 characters, you can actually store 6 characters in it. It's only in the case of char variable, and this is how we can achieve that. So char name 7, so the Ankpro is a name having 6 characters, but you can have maximum of 6 characters in the variable name of size 7. So at the end, one more character will be appended, which is done by the compiler, which is called as null character. Right, so this is one more type of variable of type float. A float, so it can have the real numbers, 3 different real numbers as specified here. So how does memory look like? So suppose I have declared a variable of type int consisting 10 integers. So this is how memory is going to be. So this is the memory space, we can assume it as a memory space, and these are the address for the different elements stored in the array A index 0, A index 1. So these are normally called as indexes, right? A of 0, 0 is the index. So that is the address of this element. A of 0 is one memory location where we have got 5. A of 1 is the second memory location continuously after the A of 0, and likewise we're going to have the contiguous memory allocated for this variable A. Right? These are the data stored inside the variable A of 10. Right? So actually we can here you can have exactly 10 numbers or 10 integers, right? Exactly 10 integers, but not in the case of character. You can have one number less. So in this program I'm going to show you how to declare an array, how to initialize it, and how we can store the elements inside array. So we're going to look all these together in this program. Okay, let's go and declare the array with the name marks of size, let's say 10. Right, so now I've got the array variable which can hold up to 10 elements of type int, and I have to have one more variable. I'll tell you why later in this program. Okay, so first I'll tell the user to enter 10 elements to store in the variable marks. And what would you specify in the scanf function? I mean, how do you address the memory of the marks variable? So normally we do using the ampersand operator. So here this is not enough to put just ampersand marks, right? Because we're not going to store it in a normal variable. We have to specify each and every memory location of marks. So this will be not work. So this will not work here because we have to iterate through all the memory location of marks. I have to use the for loop or any loop to iterate throughout the marks variable, throughout the marks array, right? So for the iteration purpose, we're going to use any loop. So here I'll be using the for loop. This is not mandatory to use only the for loop. You can go for while or do while. Point here is we have to iterate through the array elements, all the array indexes. For that purpose, we are using the loop. Especially I every time use the for loop to work with array. So here the variable I declared I, right? So I'm going to use it here. So I'll initialize that array. I'll initialize that variable with 0. And I will iterate up to its value remains 10, and I'll increment it, right? So here inside this for loop I'm going to execute the scanf function for 10 times to accept the values, right? to accept the value for every location, the scanf function has to run for 10 times. For that purpose, I'll be using this. So ampersand marks of. So here I will put the variable I, because whenever I starts with some index, some number, so that number will be replaced here. So I initialized I with 0. At the first step, marks of 0 will be the location, memory location where my first element is going to store. Right, so I value changes every time by referring to the successive memory locations of marks variable. So that is how we iterate through the array, right? So every time it's going to change its value starting from 0 to 9, right? I had to stop when the I value comes to 9. So this is my endpoint. Because we are starting from 0, so it has to end at the number 9. So that counts 10 here. So when I is 0, first element is inputted, I is 1, second element, I is 3, third element. When I is 9, the 10th element is inputted. Right? So this is for the input operation. I have to print those elements back on the screen to ensure that all elements are accepted properly. So for that I'm going to use one more pair of printf and for loop, right, to specify that. So I'm just copy and paste it again. Paste. So that's it. Right. So I will change the text here. Good. We got it. Good. These are the elements. And here inside the loop, instead of scanf, so I have to put the printf, right? And in place of ampersand, I'll just remove this ampersand, because we're not going to store this time. Rather, we're going to print the elements back on the screen, right? Uh, yes, we got everything, but one thing I have to specify the /n character. Okay, everything is fine. Let's go and run this program. So please enter 10 elements. That's all right. And this is the 10th element. Good. These are the elements. So the above set of numbers are the inputted numbers what I have inputted using the first for loop, where it has got scanf inside it, and the second set of numbers are the output of my program where the second for loop executed, right? So when this for loop executed, I can input the number, and when this for loop executes, I can get the numbers back on the screen. So remember this: when you have to input the numbers into the array and retrieve them back, you have to have two for loops or any two loops, because the point here is you have to iterate through the array elements. So that is the point here. So remember that. Otherwise, you have to have the 10 scanf functions and the 10 printf functions to print all the elements individually. So here I'm showing you what happens when we don't use the for loop, or if you're not using the for loop, how can you accept the array elements. So here I'm telling enter 5 elements. So to enter or to accept the 5 integer elements, I have to of course use the scanf function, but here we're not using the loop, right? So I have to use the scanf function 5 times. Ampersand marks of, let's say I'm storing the first element in the 0 index, so I will scan copy, so this is what I have to do if I'm not using the loop, right? So I have to have the 5 scanf functions for the 5 elements, and the same number of statements for printing them back, right? So these are 5 elements are, so now I'll replace this Okay, I put the slash n in all the printf statements. So these are my elements. So I hope you understand the difference between using for loop and not using for loop in the context of array. Alright. Now, so now I hope you understood the program. So friends, in this program I'm going to accept 5 integer numbers and I'll add them together to find out the sum of those 5 integer numbers. For that I'll make use of this array variable. Here arr is an array variable of type integer which can hold up to maximum of 5 elements. So let's go and have that scanf statement inside the for loop. So remember, you should not end the for loop with the semicolon, because this is not the ending statement. For loop statement doesn't end at the same line, so you should not put that. Right, first I equals to 0, I is less than or equal to 4, because we are starting with the index 0, right? I plus plus. So this scanf function will accept the every element and stores them in the respective memory location specified by I. Here I'll tell like the sum of 5 numbers are, so I have to use the for loop to iterate through all the array elements. So just make this basic structure first, so you cannot miss any field, right? I is equal to 0, I is less than or equal to 4. So now arr variable has got 5 elements in it, right? Before this statement I used scanf, so arr will be accepted all the 5 elements. So now I'm go and check all those 5 elements and add them together. So how can I get them all back? So for that I need one more variable, say suppose sum, where I'm going to store all the where I'm going to store sum of all those variables, all those numbers. Sum equals to, and I'll initialize the variable sum with 0. Here I'll say sum is equal to sum plus the content of the array variable, arr of 0, right? When I is 0, arr 0 is some value. It has got some value in it. So that will be added to the content of sum. At the first stage, it is 0. At the first step, sum has got 0. So 0 plus the number will be stored in sum. And the value of I is checked here. 0 is less than or equal to 4. Yes. And I will be incremented to 1. So the previous sum plus the arr1 will be added together, and it's going to be again in the sum variable. So this happens every time. Right, I have to have one more statement here after the printf statement, after the loop. Sorry, I have this printf statement. The sum of 5 numbers is %d. That means here I have to have sum. So I don't need this anymore now. Control F9. So the sum of 5 numbers is 25. I hope you understood this program. Now try this program in your compiler. If you get any error or any problem, just comment below this video. Well friends, that's it for the class. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our page on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and join our group on LinkedIn. Thank you.